Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. At the premiere of the film Apocalypse Now at the Cannes Film Festival, Francis Ford Coppola said, "My film is not a movie. My film is not about Vietnam. It is Vietnam. It's what it was really like. It was crazy, and the way we made it was very much like the way the Americans were in Vietnam. We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little, we went insane." Pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, an examination of one of the most vivid and multi-layered portrayals of the Vietnam War. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
When you think about the movie Apocalypse Now, directed by Francis Coppola and released in 1979, what do you think of? Watching Apocalypse Now is like admiring a Jackson Pollock mural. It's abstract, consisting of many layers, and defying you to understand it. But do you understand the deeper meaning underlying the smorgasbord of sights, sounds, horror, and ironies Coppola is throwing at you? Coppola was the darling of Hollywood, having completed two monumental hit movies, Godfather I and Godfather II, in 1972 and 1974 respectively. Only a director of Coppola's stature would have been given poetic license by the studio to attempt to make the movie. On August 15th, 1979, I stood in line to see a Dolby 70mm showcase of the film at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. The film didn't include credits, and we were handed a glossy 12-page souvenir magazine-style booklet detailing the production. I wish I had that booklet today. It's likely very valuable. The film made an indelible impression upon me, and years later, my film friends and I would recite memorable lines to each other.
The bullshit piled up so fast in Vietnam, you needed wings to stay above it.
Charlie, don't surf!
Charging a man with murder in this place was like handing out speeding tickets at the Indy 500.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
I'm going to give you my meaning of the film, and you can agree or disagree. But I want you to watch the movie and study its message, because it's important you attempt to find the meaning of this film or any serious film, particularly concerning war. I'm going to provide a summary of the movie, which, if you've seen it, will serve as a refresher, and if you haven't seen it, don't worry. You're in for an adventure just like Captain Willard. I want you to think of the army you're going to encounter in the film like a corporation, and Captain Willard as a traveling salesman who's biding time until his next mission or sales call inside a Saigon hotel room, strung out on psychedelics. We learn that he doesn't have much to go home to.
I hardly said a word to my wife until I said yes to a divorce. When I was here, I wanted to be there. When I was there, all I could think of was getting back into the jungle.
He's summoned to command, or think of it as corporate headquarters, by military policemen who clean him up physically and mentally, for the moment anyways, with a cold shower before his meeting with command, which I want you to imagine as a board of directors. The meeting is held in a double-wide trailer behind razor-wired gates on an army base. The trailer has all the hallmarks of any trailer inside a trailer park stateside. We're introduced to command. Listen to the banter typical of military efficiency.
Try some, Jerry, and pass it around. Save a little time, we might pass both ways. Captain, I don't know how you feel about this shrimp, but if you'll eat it, you'll never have to prove your courage in any other way.
I want you to think of Lieutenant General Art Corman, a veiled tip of the hat to director Roger Corman, played aptly by G.D. Sprodlin, as the CEO.
Well, you see, Willard, in this war, things get confused out there. Power, ideals, the old morality, and practical military necessity. But out there with these natives, it must be a temptation to be God. Because there's a conflict in every human heart between the rational and the irrational, between good and evil. And good does not always triumph.
Imagine Colonel G. Lucas, another veiled tip of the hat to George Lucas, the filmmaker, like the executive vice president, but acting as the intelligence officer, underplayed deliciously by a young Harrison Ford.
Your mission is to proceed up the Nung River in a Navy patrol boat. Pick up Colonel Kurtz's path at New Mung Ba. Follow it, learn what you can along the way. When you find the colonel, infiltrate his team by whatever means available, and terminate the colonel's command.
Terminate the colonel.
And finally, imagine the civilian as a vice president, who sure as hell doesn't look like a member of the Peace Corps. The CIA officer is named Jerry Moore, who utters likely the most memorable line in the film. It was played by the film's assistant director, Jerry Zismer.
Terminate with extreme prejudice.
I'll bet you dollars to donuts Zismer lobbied for the opportunity to read those immortal lines. Why is Command assassinating Kurtz? My first point. Kurtz was no different than damage control over bad PR for a company who generally fires and doesn't kill a whistleblower, which you can consider Kurtz. Colonel Kurtz was a threat to the command prosecuting the war because Kurtz wasn't preaching peace. No, he was preaching mismanagement of the war. Kurtz was no anti-war campus protester. Colonel Kurtz was a warrior in the Greek and Roman classical sense of the word. Remember, Willard reviewing Kurtz's jacket? See my podcast about military lawyers and film regarding jackets, which are the equivalent of a file folder including academic transcripts and other documents.
At first, I thought they handed me the wrong dossier. I couldn't believe they wanted this man dead. Third generation West Point, top of his class, Korea, airborne, about 1,000 decorations. Like they said, he had an impressive career. Maybe too impressive. I mean, perfect. He was being groomed for one of the top slots in the corporation. General, chief of staff, anything. In 1964, he returned from a tour with Advisory Command in Vietnam, and things started to slip. His report to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Lyndon Johnson was restricted. Seems they didn't dig what he had to tell them.
Kurtz wanted to be the tip of the spear, even if it meant he'd die or top out as colonel and never making general. Kurtz was questioning the management of a war which wasn't meant to win, I contend. It was the first war to reveal the military-industrial complex President and former Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us about. John F. Kennedy wanted us out of Vietnam before his assassination, as did his brother, Robert F. Kennedy. Some speculate these declarations may have influenced their assassinations. I challenge you to examine every war our country is engaged in and ask the question I formulated for myself as a teenager in high school history class. What's the financial motive of the parties? Suddenly, every issue I studied thereafter became crystal clear. Kurtz was sending out radio broadcasts from his Cambodian hideout condemning the Army's prosecution of the war, and it was working. Remember Scott Glenn playing Captain Richard Colby, who was assigned to Willard's mission before defecting and joining Kurtz's private army? Unlike corporations providing a golden parachute, the Army would provide a golden bullet.
Like I was shot with a diamond.
A diamond bullet right through my forehead.
The Army had its own PR machine in full force. Remember Coppola's cameo playing a news film director?
Just keep running by. Look at the television. Go look at the camera. Just keep going. Go on. Keep going. Look at the television. Go look at the camera. Go look at the camera. Just go by like you're fighting. Like you're fighting. Go look at the camera. It's the television. Just go through. Go through. Just go by. Keep on going. Go look. Go on.
The film's cinematographer Vittorio Storaro plays the cameraman by Coppola's side. The Vietnam War was a battle for the hearts and minds of the American public, and for half the country it worked. It took Walter Cronkite, who had the most popular evening news program at the time on CBS, to comment on February 27, 1968.
For it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. But it is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could.
Cronkite's popularity and trust amongst the television news-watching public is credited with turning public sentiment against the war. Willard boards a Navy gunship to proceed upriver into Cambodia and assassinate Colonel Kurtz.
The crew were mostly just kids. Rock and rollers with one foot in their graves.
How old are you? 17.
The machinist, the one they called Chef, was from New Orleans. He was wrapped too tight for Vietnam. Probably wrapped too tight for New Orleans. Lance, on the forward 50s, was a famous surfer from the beaches south of L.A. To look at him, you wouldn't believe he'd ever fired a weapon in his life. Clean, Mr. Clean, was from some South Bronx hole, and I think the light and space of Vietnam really put the zap on his head. Then there was Phillips, the chief. It might have been my mission, but it sure was the chief's boat.
We're treated to deliberately absurd scenes serving as metaphors for the lunacy of the war, like surfing Colonel Kilgore, commanding the air cavalry.
First of the Ninth was an old cavalry division that cashed in its horses for choppers and gone terrassing around Nam looking for the ship.
And surfer soldiers flying missions in formation to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries.
We're coming low out of the rising sun, and about a mile out we'll put on the music. Music? Yeah, use Wagner. My boys love it. Sing it loud. Into the Romeo Foxtrot, shall we dance?
We're provided a big metaphor at the gunboat stopover at the evening party, a concert featuring Playboy bunnies who whip the troops into a physical frenzy and emotional frenzy because they're reminded of home. It's a bad morale boost, and remember the hasty retreat and wrangling of the bunnies by the promoter, played by real-life music promoter Bill Graham, conveniently flying home and out of the toilet, back to the world, leaving the frustrated and homesick soldiers flushed away. It's a huge metaphor about the expendability of the soldier. The casualty count for United States personnel, I find, is 58,200. And if you're interested, they can't even put an exact number on the body count for Vietnamese Army and civilians, estimating 970,000 to 3 million. Back to my theme about war as profit. According to my research, the direct financial cost of the Vietnam War for the United States was roughly $168 billion, which equates to over $1 trillion by today's standards. And some analysis suggests totals closer to $200 to $250 billion. The Vietnam War lasted 19 years and 5 months, from November 1st, 1955 to April 30th, 1975, ending with the fall of Saigon to North Vietnamese forces. I was alive to watch it on television. Killing a whistleblower like Kurtz or as it's been suggested by some, a young president, was a no-brainer given the money finding its way throughout the military-industrial complex. Why didn't Kurtz kill Captain Willard? If you watch Captain Willard's command throughout the movie, he was about completing the mission. Willard was regular Army, not a draftee.
They were going to make me a major for this. And I wasn't even in their f***ing army anymore.
Kurtz was regular Army, and although he roughed Willard up a bit, he confided to Willard inside his headquarters consisting of a dark cave, suggestive of a dead womb holding a dead fetus to this viewer. Kurtz reveals to Willard that our army was incapable of winning the war.
I remember when I was with Special Forces, we went into a camp to inoculate some children. We left the camp after we had inoculated the children for polio. And this old man came running after us, and he was crying. He couldn't say. We went back there, and they had come and hacked off every inoculated arm. There they were in a pile of little arms. And I thought, my God, the genius of that. The genius. The will to do that. Perfect, genuine, complete, crystalline, pure. And then I realized they were stronger than we because they could stand it. These were not monsters. These were men, trained cadres. These men who fought with their hearts, who have families, who have children, who are filled with love. But they have the strength to do that.
Kurtz asked Willard, officer to officer, to become introspective.
I expected someone like you. What did you expect? Are you an assassin?
I'm a soldier.
You're neither. You're an errand boy, sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill.
I contend Kurtz accepts his fate because he's tired, but sends a message to his family.
I worry that my son might not understand what I've tried to be. And if I were to be killed in Willard, I would want someone to go to my home and tell my son everything. Everything I did, everything you saw. Because there's nothing that I detest more than the stench of lies. And if you understand me, Willard, you will do this for me.
Willard and Lance return to the boat, call in an airstrike, and Kurtz's world is destroyed. It's ironic a film about a hollow war also raged behind the camera while shooting inside the Philippines. It should be obvious the Army offered no cooperation. Many of the biggest stars passed on these juicy roles for a variety of reasons, the principal not wanting to be away for an extended period of time in the Philippines, known for heat and humidity. Shooting began in 1976. A typhoon wrecked as much as 80% of the sets. A year later, Martin Sheen, playing Captain Willard, had a near-fatal heart attack. The budget doubled to over $25 million, and the cost overruns amounted to $18 million, of which Coppola was personally liable. Listen up, budding filmmakers. It may be necessary to put it all on the line to finish your film. Fortunately, Coppola retained rights to the movie in perpetuity, and he has done well with the Coppola Winery. In 1979, Coppola arranged 3 sneak previews of a 139-minute cut attended by 2,000 paying customers. I was one, as previously mentioned. A 3-hour version, work in progress, was screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 1979 and won the Palme d'Or for Best Film. The total cost of the film is reported to be $45 million. There are other notable Vietnam films to watch, my favorite being the Kubrick Full Metal Jacket, shot on a back lot at a British studio, hence the always cloudy days during the movie. Check it out. You'll notice it. I won't recommend any of these movies as bookends to Apocalypse Now, as Apocalypse Now stands alone. The only Oscar wins were for Best Cinematography, Vittorio Storaro, and Best Sound for Walter Murch and others. In summary, remember what Willard remarked about Command.
No wonder Kurtz put a weed up Command's ass. The war was being run by a bunch of 4-star clowns who were going to end up giving the whole circus away.
I don't believe it's directed at the Command, and don't interpret it as a swipe at service people gallantly dispatching their duties inside a fruitless war. But I believe, like the soldiers left behind by the promoter, a huge metaphor for our government. Willard's comment was correctly directed at the profit motives behind the war promulgated by the military-industrial complex. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint, and remember,
Horror. Horror.
And finally, rather than bookends, I would recommend 2 extraordinary appendices to Apocalypse Now. First, the documentary Hearts of Darkness about the filming of Apocalypse Now, as well as the 1986 war film Platoon, if for nothing else, to see Martin Sheen's son, Charlie Sheen, taking the lead role in an equally devastating portrait of the horrors of war. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at the Jonathan B. Farini Story Collection at jonathanfarini.com. Also, if you read Jonathan's short story, Mind Shaft, look for Mind Shaft Part 2, in which a troubled young woman meets a lonely retired gold miner in Death Valley. Entering a shuttered gold mine, they become trapped, but discover artifacts revealing important lessons for both. Mind Shaft Part 2, already published in the September edition of The Wise Owl, it's been published yet again, this time in the latest issue of CC&D magazine collection book, Enlightened Mind, from Scars Publications. Go to scars.tv or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.